figured I would talk to you about it. And to be honest with you, it's not the most uplifting or relaxing conversation I'm going to have with you. But it is a part of who I am. And I know that as someone who is part of the ASMR community, I like to get to know the people I listen to and watch. And I've stayed relatively anonymous, and mostly for the sake of my children and the embarrassment of how I look. I probably will continue being relatively anonymous, but I wanted to share a bit about myself with you today. And again, it's not a relaxing thing, but I had a conversation today with someone, and it spawned a lot of memories and emotion. And it's kind of been weighing heavy on my heart today. And right now the wind is going crazy outside. And there's all kinds of noises happening. I don't know if you can hear that wind chime. But that wind chime is a part of my story, believe it or not. I know that it's been an audible part of at least one of my other videos. So maybe you can hear it. I can. But before I get to that, I'll just say that it's been quiet here today because my husband left really early in the morning to take a trip for business, and he'll be back tomorrow, but I really miss him. And like I said, it's been really quiet here without him. And not because he's loud, because I would say that he's probably the quietest person in our family. But just because I love him, and I'm so used to talking to him in the evenings, so it's just kind of quiet here without him. So that's probably adding to my somber mood. But I'll take you to my story. I am send a lot of packages for my job. And I live in a small town, so I've gotten to know the mail carriers really well. And one of them today was asking me about my parents. And he already knows the story of my mom, but not of my dad. And I told him a little bit about it. And then he asked me about some other stuff regarding my mom. And I had to talk about it. And I don't do that very often. Most of the time I'm okay. I really am. I'm not one of those people that buries out their feelings and then just says I'm okay. Or says I'm okay even when I really feel like I'm not. But I think even the strongest people have days where they feel weak or broken. And I wouldn't even say that I'm broken or weak. It's just talking about my parents and all the emotion that goes along with it. It just makes me tired. So I'll begin. In 2006, on a hot summer day, I was going to visit a friend that I hadn't seen since high school. And we were in a very loud restaurant. And I got 2 phone calls from numbers that I did not recognize, so I didn't even pay attention to them. And then I got a call from a number I did recognize and was told that I needed to know something. So I said, I'll call you back. I can't really hear inside. And I was wrapping up my dinner date with a friend. So I got into my car and had that conversation that I'll never forget. It's my daughter moving around. Anyways, in that conversation, I was told that my mom had been in a serious car accident and that I needed to come home right away. So I said, okay, where do I need to go? Is she at the hospital? Where should I go? And I heard the words, the coroner is here. And I fell apart. I was screaming, driving down one of the busiest streets in the big city near where I live, crying, yelling yelling, "You're lying, you're lying." I couldn't believe my mom was dead. Even though at the time I was 27, I was very close to my mom, and I am an only child, and so it was difficult. My life changed, and when something that drastic happens to you, that becomes like something etched in stone on your life's timeline. Everything became before my mom died and after my mom died. And it was a really difficult time in my life. But even my dad and his wife came to the little ceremony that we had for my mom. It was a celebration of life ceremony, because my mom would have hated a funeral. And so my parents had been split since I was about 8 years old, and my dad got remarried when I was 11. And so I thought it was really nice that they came. And I was close to my dad too. But he and his wife they lived about 90 minutes away. So I didn't see my dad quite as often, but I did talk to him very consistently. Around that same time, I found out that my dad had diabetes, which ended up in an amputation of his foot, then of the leg, and then to the knee. This was over a period of several years. And my poor dad was getting so frustrated. He was so excited for the day he'd be able to walk around and get a prosthetic that would fit him and do all of the normal things that he missed doing by being in a wheelchair and an amputee. Because my dad was older. When I was born, he was 40. So this all happened when he was about 70 years old. So he was not young anymore. So it's not like he could just bounce back. And it took some time to heal. And my dad had his final amputation, the one above the knee. And he was staying at a rehab hospital, sort of like for physical therapy. And I took my whole family down to visit him. And we stayed for a couple of hours and hung out with him. It was really nice. And gosh, a week later, I suppose, my aunt, my dad's sister, called me to tell me that my dad had a heart attack, followed by 4 mini heart attacks, and that he was in a coma. So I went down to see him, and I walked into ICU. And I knew right then that I would never see my dad the way that I remembered him. Not the way that I wanted to remember him. And it wasn't a matter of not having hope. It was, I just knew. And I went down again to see him, and a lot of family flew in from a lot of different places. And we were holding out hope, but it wasn't looking good. And I wasn't surprised. And there's that wind chime again. My dad died in September of 2011. Just a few days after I went out to see him for the final time. And he did have a funeral. And my dad was such a jokester that I wouldn't call it a formal eulogy, but I just told a story of him. And how when I was about 7 or 8 years old, he took me for a drive in his truck. And it was hot. And I had gotten a sunburn on the top of my legs from being in the car so long with the window down. And we got pulled over because my dad had expired tags on his truck. I think it was probably 3 or 4 years old. And the only reason the cop didn't give my dad a bag ticket or tow his truck was because I was in the car with my sunburned legs. And the police officer felt really bad for me. And he didn't want to make me walk. So he just gave my dad a warning, and we went on our merry way. And it was kind of funny, but that's the story I told, and I had so many more to tell, but I miss him very much. But when my mom died, it was heartbreaking because it was so unexpected. I really thought that my mom would be alive to see all of my children born, and that she'd be around even when I was old. Even though she was 33 when I was born, she was kind of spunky and vivacious, and I didn't expect to lose her when she was only 61. So I knew my mom wanted to be cremated, and I know that not a lot of people are comfortable with that, but that was her choice. And I went to the funeral home to pick out an urn for her. And I couldn't find anything that I wanted. I just kept flipping through pages and pages of these things that kind of look like trophies, and then there were like dolphin figurines. And then I turned the page and I saw it. It was a little tiny box where, like, seriously only maybe a teaspoon of her ashes would fit. But it was attached to a wind chime. And my mom had about 7 million of them. And it was just so fitting. And so that noise you hear out there, if you hear it, and I hear it all the time, I feel like that's her letting me know that she's still here with me. And I know it's corny and it probably isn't even true. But that's what gets me through the day. And the man who hit my mom had lost his job that day. And he was mad. Sorry, that's my baby back there. So he was mad and frustrated. So he went down to the local liquor store that was kind of out in the middle of nowhere and bought himself, I think it was a bottle of whiskey. And he sat in the parking lot and he drank the whole thing. And he proceeded to drive home. And hit my mom less than a block away. And it's weird because she wasn't even supposed to be there. My mom was a teacher. And she'd gotten out half a day early because she had an appointment. The doctor. Specialty appointment. And then she had gone shopping for her kids, her students. She liked to give them candy and stuff, so she had a car full of candy. And it was a 4-way stop. And I don't know how she didn't see him, but there was a whole lot of bushes and trees on that corner. And she went to go across the street and he was coming from her left and he basically hit her right in her driver door and pushed her car about 100 yards. And she was dead on impact. And I found out that he only had a broken arm, and I was very angry about that for a while. And I knew he was in jail. And I was getting calls from his lawyer and stuff. And they were telling me that he was suicidal, and at the time I really didn't even care, to be honest, as cold as that sounds. I didn't want to hear that. I was so disconnected from him, I just was like, whatever. So sometime later we went to the sentencing, and I knew that he wasn't going to get very long in jail because I think it was like an involuntary manslaughter charge. I can't remember. Vehicular manslaughter? I can't remember, but anyways. I think he got 5 years. So he's out now, I'm sure. But when I was going into the sentencing, I was told, he's not going to look at you. He's not going to acknowledge you. Don't expect anything from him. And if you've never been in a courtroom for this type of thing, they have all the, I don't know what you'd call them, prisoners. I guess they're in jail, not prison, but They have them come out and sit kind of in benches. And they come out kind of like in 2 rows from the back. And as soon as I laid my eyes on him, I knew that he was the one that had hit my mom. And I think my heart must have stopped. And he looked at me and he knew who I was. I can tell he knew who I was because he couldn't stop looking at me. And when the judge asked me if I had anything to say, I stood up. And I don't remember what I said. Something about how he took her from me, but he also took her from my children. And he actually turned around and looked at me with his head down. And he nodded when I told him he better never, ever, ever drink and drive again. And the judge was really mad at him too. Because it was so senseless. If he wouldn't have made that one decision, that one ridiculously stupid decision, my mom would still be here with me. And you know, she drove me crazy. I think moms drive us crazy. That's just what they do. She was opinionated as hell. She always had to be right. She was a cat fanatic. She had like 7,000 cats. I mean, not really. She wasn't an old cat lady, but she liked cats. She salted her salad. Who does that? But I would take it back. Every single negative thing I've ever said. I would take all of those quirky little things in a heartbeat to have her here. But that day in court, I found so much peace. And I forgave that man that killed my mother. Because nobody drinks an entire bottle of whiskey and purposely goes out and kills somebody. And he had to have been in such a broken place. And then to find out that he killed someone. Imagine what that did to him. And all I needed to know was that he was sorry. He never said it directly to me, but I could see it in his eyes, in his expression, in his body language. I knew he was sorry. It's kind of ironic too, because his birthday was, I think, the day before the accident. It was right around the same time. And I think a few months after he was put in jail, his father was diagnosed with cancer. And he died while he was in jail. And I felt bad for him when I found that out. because I knew that he would know even more how I felt. I felt bad. But I have peace, because I truly believe he'll never do it again. And I have peace because I know that my mom, one of her biggest fears was dying. Of old age, going senile, or being in a lot of pain. And I know that things happened so fast, she had no idea what hit her. I know she didn't suffer. And that wind chime reminds me often that she's still with me. And my dad, I miss his laughter. And his words of wisdom. He always knew the right thing to say to make me feel better. And that's the story of me, and of my parents. And the tale of that snippet, that little piece of my life. And I know it's not a relaxing story, and it's not a happy one. But it's my story. And I hope you feel a little bit closer to me now. And knowing a little bit more about who I am and what I've been through. And little pieces of what has made me who I am today. So thank you for coming along with me on this little journey. And if you're still listening, I give you major props. So thank you. I hope despite my story that you're relaxed and rested, and that you're able to sleep. But if you take nothing else from this, please just hug your family tightly, because you never know what will happen in any moment of your life. Things could be stolen from you in an instant, and there's never going back, and it sucks. So hug your family and your friends and tell them on a regular basis how much they mean to you. Okay? Be kind to everyone. Try to make somebody smile today. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.